I want to do a Diablo 3 style character select scene, and for that I've already come up with a scene. I've put it into a package, so I'm going to import it from my downloads folder. You'll notice that it's got a scene with everything in it, so import all. And I'm going to open a scene called character select. So here we have the scene that I've put together. All of the files are in the links in the description. And first let me just click play, show you what this looks like. So this is nothing more than a bunch of assets put together and placed in certain positions. All I did here is create 2 more characters. It's exactly the same character that we've been working on, just with a different colored material. As you can see, this is red and everything else is the same. This is green and it's got the same character control and everything else. It's a prefab variant where the only difference is the color or the material. And we also have the fire. This is just a VFX that I found online. It was a video tutorial, and again, I have all the links in the descriptions. And everything else is nothing more than a cube and some texture, a grid texture. And we also have some lighting. Let me open up the Light Explorer. And you can see all of the lights in the scene. You'll notice that if I play, or even if I play and click on whatever, nothing happens, because this is just a scene with a bunch of objects. We don't have any scripts. We don't have the keyboard input script in the scene. There's nothing interactive here. So first I'm going to create something called mouse control. If you've unpacked the package, we'll have a character select folder under the environment, RB environment. I'm going to create a script called mouse control. Go in there. Start with the namespace. And I'm going to create an empty game object in the scene, and it'll be called mouse control with the mouse control script, and drag it in to turn it into a prefab. We want to be able to click on things inside the scene through our screen using our mouse. So inside the mouse control script, we're going to need array and array cast hit. We're going to use those 2 things to detect where our mouse is. So array is going to be based on our main camera. I'm going to press Ctrl T, go to the camera manager, and I want a public variable called main camera. And right in the beginning of the game, I'm going to look for a game object called main camera. If we look back at our scene, Here we have the main camera. It's called main camera, and this is what we're looking for. And the public variable main camera is what we get from that game object. So if I go back to mouse control, we can now get main camera from the camera manager. And we're going to use something called ScreenPointToRay by using the mouse position. This is going to shoot a ray from your camera into the 3D space based on your mouse position. And if that ray hits something, we're going to look at the object that is hit, and we're going to check if that object is a character or not. So if that object has character control, that means it's a character. So if control is not null, it's a character, we're going to do something about it. If it's not a character, then we've clicked on some other stuff in the scene and we're going to deselect whatever you selected previously. We want to save which character that you selected. So I'm going to create a new script called character select. This is going to be a scriptable object. Start with namespace. It's a scriptable object. Create asset menu. File name character select. The menu will be based on our previous category, Roundbeargames. And we'll create a new section called character select. And the file name will be character select. I'll have a public enum called playable character type. Start with none. We have the yellow character, red, and green. So this is what you're selecting by your mouse click. And inside the scriptable object, we save the data. Playable character type, which is the enum. We'll call it selected character type. I'll press Ctrl T, go into character control. And every character will have the enum as a public variable. So if I save everything and go back to Unity and look at the characters, I'll make sure that the public variable match yellow enum for the yellow character, red, and green. So now if I go back to mouse control, whenever we click on something, if we've clicked on a character, then we'll get the selected character from the character control. So selected character type is what we just designated inside character control. And if what we've clicked on is not a character, then we'll set it back to none. So save everything, go back to Unity, and I'm going to create a scriptable object called character select. mouse control is going to need access to character select. And when we do a left click, input get mouse button down 0. 0 is left click. First we want to check if the raycast is hitting a character. We're going to change the data in the scriptable object. Okay. If the raycast is something other than the character, then we'll set it back to none. So if I go back to Unity, first I want to make sure that the public variable for the mouse control, we drag in the character select, and if I click play, we want to pay attention to the scriptable object. So if I click on yellow, we now have the yellow selected. Click on green, we get green. Click on red, we get red. And if we look at mouse control, so mouse control just responds to your mouse hover, and the scriptable object responds to the clicking. So if we click on some other place other than the character, we get none. Select the character, we get the right data, the enum. And we're all set. Basically, we're going to be using this data to spawn whatever character that you selected. But first, it would be a little better if these light sources respond to your hover or your click, and they move to the corresponding character to show the which one you clicked on. So for this specific light source called point light hover, I'm going to create a new C# script. I'll call it character hover light. Go in there. Namespace. We want a public vector. I'll call it offset. This is a distance of the hover light away from the character. We also want the character control of the character that we're hovering on. Hover selected character. We want the mouse control that we just created. Mouse hover select. We might also want the target position for the light source. And we'll also be controlling the light component. So in the beginning of the game, I want to get the mouse control. Mouse control. And I want the light component. Let's go back and make sure that the point light hover has the script. And in the update, we now want to be following the mouse hover. If the mouse control, if the selected character type in the mouse control, if it's not selecting a character, and hover target is null, and we'll also turn off the light. But if we're hovering over a character, turn the light on, and I'll create a simple function called light up selected character. So we light up a character if we're hovering over it. We only need to be lighting it up once. So if the hover selected character is null, that's when we do something. I want to be able to set up the target, but in order to find the target, we need a character manager. Let me go into the managers folder and create a character manager. First namespace. This is going to be a singleton. And this manager is going to have a list of all the characters in the scene. I'll call it characters. And we want to be able to say get character by using the character type yellow, green, or red. So we iterate through all of the characters in the list. And if there's a match between the playable character type and the parameter, then we return that character. If nothing matches, we return nothing. I'm going to go to character control, and we need to be registering in the beginning of the game. So I'll create a function called register character. And if the character is not already included in the list, then we add the character to the list. And we do this in the beginning of the game in the awake function. Let me delete the unnecessary lines. Okay. So if I go back to character hover light, we can now find the character using the character manager, get character, and we get the parameter from the mouse control. Once we find the character, we set the position of the light. We get the character's position, and we add the offset. Make sure you save everything. And if I click play, so whenever I hover over a character, we see that the light is now changing its position. We don't have any offset yet for the hover light, so add the offset. So it's not right below the character, it's a little in front of it. Maybe a little higher on the Y. So it's a little in front and above. Okay, so 1.8 on the Y and 1 on the Z, that's the offset. And whenever we're hovering over the character, you see the hover light changes position. And the position is character position plus the offset. Okay. Now we want another light source, and that is for when you click. So let me create a new script inside character select. I'll call it character select light. Namespace. And this one is going to be rather simple because we already have the hover light. In the beginning, we want to start off by saying that light is enabled false. First, let me get the light component, just like the hover light. So this light is going to start turned off, and it's only going to turn on when you click on a character. First, go to Unity, and we have the select light. Make sure that it has the character select light script. And back in mouse control, we want to have the character select light as a public variable. Actually, it doesn't need to be public. We want both the select light and the hover light. We'll find those right in the beginning of the game. I'll also say, by default, in the beginning of the game, selected character type is none. Now that we have access to both hover light and the select light, whenever we do a mouse click, if we're clicking on something other than a character, then we turn the select light off. Okay, this has to be public. And when we click on a character, character select light gets turned on, and we also change the position, and that position is going to be same as the character hover light. Save, and if I go back to Unity, click play, so the hover light works as intended. You see the light changing positions, and if I click on a character, we have two light sources shining on a character, so it's a little brighter when you click. So first you see the hover light go into a character. Right now here's a select light, But if I do a left click, both of the lights go to the selected character. Again, first the hover light and then the select light. You can see it in the scene view. It's a subtle difference, so you might want to set up the intensity a little higher for the select light. For now, I think it looks good enough. Now we just need to do a scene transition. I'm going to create a new C# script inside the character select folder. I'll call it play game. Namespace. The script is going to be pretty simple. If we press enter, return, which is enter, we want to change the scene. Get the SceneManager and use a function called loadscene. And we just have to enter the scene name. I don't like entering it by name. I'll just go to character control. Now I'll create a public enum called RB scenes. I'll copy paste the names, the scene names. So we have character select, I'll call this sample. So we have the scene names. And if I go back to play game, I'll just use the enums. For now, I can switch to the sample scene. We also want to make sure that we've selected a character before switching scene. So we only do this if the selected character is not none. If it's none, we're not going to change scene. We'll put up a message, must select character first. So if I go back to Unity, first, before we're switching scenes, press Ctrl-Shift-B and add the current scene into the build. Also open the sample scene and add that to the list as well. So now if I play, hold on. I have to create an empty game object called play game. Make sure that the play game script is in there. Drag it in to turn it into a prefab. And we also want to drag in the character select into the public variable. Now if I click play, so in the beginning of the game, pressing enter is not going to do anything. We're going to get the debug message. We must select the character first. So if I click on any one of these characters, we see the data changing on the scriptable object. And now if I press enter, we move into this sample scene. And we still have the data right here. We have the data, but the sample scene loads up with this default yellow character. It's not loading depending on the data. We'll fix that later. And one more thing. If if you look at the scene, the characters are facing the fire, but if I play, all of a sudden they're facing directly forward. This is happening because we have a face forward function in the character control. So we'll just say that inside the face forward function, we want to check the scene name. We can use a function called getActiveScene. We get the name, and if the name equals the character select scene, then we're not going to tell the character to move forward. So save. And now if I click play, you see that the angle is the same as we set up. And we have the character select working. We have the lighting to show which character that you selected on. Right now we don't have any UI, but those things can be added later on. So that's it for this video. Thanks for watching.